guys, how's it going, everybody? My name is Blitzwinger. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am joined for a very hopefully interesting debate by the one and only JayShockBlast. What's going on, dude? Welcome.
Living the dream. Always love chatting with you. I think it always makes a good video.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm actually really stoked for this because if you guys both or follow us both on Twitter, you might have seen that we got into it a little bit and got into a bit of a debate in regards to Spider-Man and the movie rights of Spider-Man and where they currently lie, and the entire controversy around Sony and Disney and Marvel and the giant mess that it has been over the last little while. So it seems like we kind of sit on two different sides of this argument, where I seem to kind of lean more towards like, yeah, Sony's perfectly in the right to do this and there's nothing wrong with them acting in the way that they have, whereas you seem to be more on the side of Disney and Marvel, saying like, hey, what's going on here? They should give Spider-Man back. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I think
no.
The reason... No, all right. So I am definitely on Marvel's side.
Okay,
like
good.
That's 100% accurate. The one thing I do want to say is I think I actually agreed with what you were tweeting. I just didn't think it was a good example with Spider-Man. Basically, your tweet was, you don't think it's a good idea that Disney should own everything.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I don't think Spider-Man's a good example because they should own Spider-Man. It's Marvel. They own Marvel. Everything within Marvel should belong to Marvel. I do understand the Sony rights situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they took advantage of Marvel when they were in dire straits. It's a kind of a catch-22 situation. Maybe Marvel's not even...
So how about, before we continue, like break that down
Sure.
for people a little bit, just so that, like we don't assume that everybody knows exactly what we're on about.
So in 1998, Marvel was just coming out of bankruptcy. They were in dire straits. Like they were in trouble. We almost lost them.
Yes.
F for respect. So they put up,
respect.
They were trying to find ways to get some money in without selling the company, without taking on investors, and they decided to sell movie rights, and a number of different studios bought in. Obviously, we know Sony bought Spider-Man and a few other things. Fox bought the X-Men, and they actually bought like the Fantastic Four and Iron Man and a few others. Sony actually also bought Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
And then New Line Cinema bought Deadpool, and there was Universal, picked up Namor and a couple others. So like they really spread it out, and basically the way I see it, and I don't know for sure, but I feel like they didn't really know what they were doing, and all of these movie studios did. Because a perfect example, what they did is you have to use these properties and make films, or the rights revert back to us if you don't do it within a certain period of time, which I believe is 3 years.
Yeah. They have to have a movie like in production, basically.
Yeah, or I don't even know if it's production. I think they have to release it. Like there's something has to come out, which is why I don't know if you've ever seen Fox did like a Fantastic Four movie, and it's like the cheesiest Fantastic Four movie you'll ever see. Like looks like they're wearing sweatpants for costumes and stuff.
No.
And they released that just so that they didn't lose the rights.
Oh,
and it was
okay.
like total budget. They put it out, quote unquote. So yeah, like they did stuff like that. But like a lot of these rights have reverted back to Marvel. Iron Man obviously reverted back to Marvel. Nobody touched that. And Ghost Rider and Luke Cage and Daredevil and all these people or characters went back to Marvel because they never get used. I don't think if they were to do this today, they never would have put the terms this way. And the reason why is you look at what Sony did. Sony did it based on X amount of movies. So Sony's deal is up now after the 5 films that they agreed to, whereas Marvel, there's this never-ending rights with Sony, and I just think it's kind of messed up. And I just feel like Spider-Man belongs with Marvel. Marvel should be able to make movies with whatever characters they want. I mean, Sony actually almost had the entire catalog of Marvel characters.
That was close. Yeah.
And super famous like line where nobody gives an ish about the other Marvel characters, just bring me Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That's what a Sony executive said.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, look, I guess the key differentiation here is that the way I look at it, right, as the events of 1999, is that if let's say the deals that took place did not take place, Marvel would be gone, right? So it's like we would never even get to the point where there's movies being made about these properties, because at the time, for Sony to give Marvel $7 million for something that was just coming out of the comic book industry crash, right? And there was just like no, if you really think about it, like imagine like a big movie rights deal, like I don't know, some like a Da Vinci Code or something big from like a book series, right? Usually when they option those rights for movies, it's like $2-3 million, and those are massive, massive successes. So to like equate that to the same thing with comic books, you could say that that was not an unfair deal, especially to a company that needed that money at that time. Meaning that, like, if they could have gotten a better deal from someone else, do you not think they would have negotiated for a higher value for Spider-Man?
Well, I don't think the money isn't what bothers me. Like it's crazy to think of the return on investment Sony has gotten out of these characters. You know, like they totally hit it out of the park with the deal. They definitely, I feel like they took advantage of the situation. I don't think Marvel was obviously operating from a position of strength. Not that they need to, but I like it. Are you familiar with how like record label deals work?
Some, not like extensively, but yeah, some of
So
them.
something that's very famous that happens with record labels is they'll sign these bands, and they're not just signing them, they're kind of getting them to sign over their catalog, their publishing
Oh, okay,
rights.
yeah, that's like recently Scooter Braun when he bought the Taylor Swift catalog of like masters, right?
It's not just that, it's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, basically
Mm-hmm.
like they own the songs.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
there's
they
a movie
they
called
own those versions of the songs, because from what I understand, again, the legal loophole around that is that similarly, like what Taylor Swift is going to do now is she's going to re-record new masters that will, I guess, be adjusted or something like that, so that Scooter Braun no longer would, like, he would still own those other versions of those songs, but he would no longer own like the new masters or something like that.
I think there's two versions of it. Like I think that's one certainly one version, but you know, essentially, um, there's a Netflix movie about Motley Crue, The Dirt.
Oh, okay, yeah, I heard about
Are you
it.
familiar with
Never
that?
watched it, but I know the Motley Crue. Yeah, of
It's
course.
awesome. All right, like I love it. It's got Ewan Rayon is in it as Mick Mars, and the kid that was in Daredevil, that was like the crazy ex-military kid
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
that like blew himself
Yeah,
up.
yeah. I don't know the
He,
name of the actor, but
yeah, I
yeah,
don't
I
know.
know.
I don't remember
Hmm.
his name, but he's Vince Neil and he's fantastic.
Okay.
And Machine Gun Kelly is Tommy Lee. So like as part of that movie, part of their like negotiation with Elektra was getting their song rights back,
Hmm.
and they did that because they want to be able to publish them and do whatever they want with their own songs. Kind of like the Beatles, they don't even own their own songs.
Yeah, but
So,
do you not feel like, okay, I guess then the bigger issue here becomes an element of discussion in regards to like creative rights versus business rights, correct? Like, and furthermore, do we not then just say, okay, well then the people who created those characters, they should own the rights. Like Stan Lee should be the owner of Spider-Man. It shouldn't even belong to Marvel by that logic, right? Because
um,
he's the one that like created the idea, but then it was Marvel that takes all the risk to, fund printing the book, inking, all the costs that are associated, paying Stan, paying Steve. Like, do we not then get into like a completely different argument about, well, okay, well, if anything creative is ever deemed to be created by a certain party, then those individuals should own the rights in perpetuity to that work.
Well, I guess that really just comes down to what agreement they had, when they signed that contract. And I guess I know that's kind of counterintuitive to, what I'm saying about the Sony Marvel thing,
Yeah,
but
because then it's
like,
like that's the deal, right? Like that's what Sony, like they agreed that, hey, we get to make Spider-Man movies for $7 million and within these terms. And should, for example, one of the other nuances that I actually did not even know until this past week is that if Sony is ever bought by another company, those rights automatically revert back to Marvel. So it's like
which is
Sony's the only one that can own them.
yeah, which is great, which is what I guess we all hope for at this point, because Sony certainly hasn't been in good shape either, financially. Um, but that's neither here nor there. I look at employer relationships a little bit different though, because I look at I worked for Bose for a many number of years, and there are people at Bose that are working for Bose, creating patents for Bose, and they don't get to leave and go to Skull Candy or something and take those with them,
Yeah.
so like it's kind of the same thing. And this was actually an issue, and kind of one of the reasons you didn't see a lot of new characters created for a while with Marvel, because apparently their deal with creators was not very good, and nobody wanted to create a character for them because they just outright owned it.
Yeah.
And that's something you have to consider. But that's their world. Their world is not their world is making comic books and creating stories. It's not,
but again, you see, the issue here is that I feel like you're romanticizing one company, and then the other one you're painting as like a ruthless business organization that seeks nothing but capital and revenue. Whereas it's like, if we're being honest, that's their motivation. Like at the end of the day, Marvel as an entity is, and before it was purchased by Disney, when it was like a standalone thing and Marvel Entertainment, its purpose and its entire existence is to make money. Because if it does not make money, it will cease to exist, just like it almost did.
Okay, let's put the business aside. Why does anybody want to take Sony's side? Business aside.
Yes. Okay. So I think that it's not a matter of like just like taking Sony's side in the sense of like saying, oh, I only agree with the business end. I think that there is definitely a large group of people that seems to sort of kind of start to realize that, hey, Disney owns everything, especially with Disney Plus. It's like we can clearly tell that, my goodness, they like own the world's most powerful brands all under one umbrella. So there's a bit of a worry of like, what will that do to the landscape as a whole? Again, there's been multiple stories about like Disney bullying theaters into like saying, hey, you're going to keep playing our movies because otherwise we're not going to screen. And there's like a lot of issues with shady stuff that Disney does. But again, you could say, okay, well, that's not Marvel, or it's a separate branch. So I think there's an element of that, of worry of one company owning everything and therefore having a huge amount of power over those same creators that we mentioned. Like if there's only one place to work, you have to toe the line.
Yeah, but you don't think Spider-Man's a bad example of that though? Like that's already a Marvel entity. Like the movie is the only.
It still is a Marvel entity. It's still a Marvel entity by all accounts. Like it's literally, they still own, they can make TV shows, right? They can make comics, they can make whatever they want outside of movies. It's just that Marvel, it's like as soon as they see the movies, they like, that's why they treated the X-Men like they did in the comics. That's how they treat, look, as soon as they got the X-Men rights back, they put Jonathan Hickman to write comics for them, and
for sure,
they knock it out of the park. So it's like they abuse their own characters as soon as, like, because they don't have the movie rights.
And you know what? I hope they do it to Spider-Man.
I mean, I think that that's a silly way of like looking at it, in the sense that if you look at something like a lot of people are saying, oh, Sony's going to do terribly with it because the Amazing Spider-Man movies suck and all that stuff. Into the Spider-Verse won an Oscar. That was a full Sony production. Like there was no Marvel or MCU involvement there at all, right?
Yeah, but like Marvel, I mean,
was that not a good movie?
Yeah, it was good, but it's animated. It's not really the same thing.
Okay, what if they make an animated universe now? Like that's what they go for.
You don't think that Marvel could do that on their own? Like they could have hired the same people to make the same movie to tell the same story.
I'm sure they could have, but the deal is that they gave that up. Like it's not like it was stolen from them. Like that's what I mean. Like a lot of people are crying wolf, like, or pretending like as if Marvel is like, oh, poor old Disney that they can't get these rights and they did all this work. And it's like, it's a business transaction. That's like how it has to be looked at. There was a fair deal that was put into place. One party paid another party a certain X amount of dollars for certain rights. And it's like, you can't just then go like, okay, well now we're in a good position and we make great movies, so we should get our character back.
Well, no, I'm fine with, like, here's the thing. I'm fine with if Sony keeps the rights or whatever. I just don't see any benefit of separating Spider-Man from everything else. Like I fully concede, like this is definitely like both parties are responsible for making this work, but I feel like they're in a pissing contest, and
Mhm.
it's stupid. And I don't care about Disney. I only care about Marvel. I'm not a Disney guy by any stretch of the imagination. I just want Marvel characters to be in Marvel movies, no matter what. I don't
Yeah.
think Marvel should have to worry 1 second about who they put in their movies. They should, if they want to get Spider-Man in their movie, they should be able to do it. And the thing is that I don't know the guy's name, but from what I understand, the guy that's heading up the Sony side of things
Yeah, Tom something.
is
I don't remember his name. Yeah.
yeah, I
Hmm.
feel like I'm pretty sure he came over from Fox and he replaced Amy Pascal, who went
Hmm.
over to Universal, which, by the way, she goes over to Universal and suddenly we've got Namor back in everything. You know why? Because Universal was holding on to Namor like, all of a sudden there's a She-Hulk TV series,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Like they were holding on to all those rights and everything, and now I feel like the deal was brokered in good faith, and I feel like Marvel actually gave up a decent amount. I mean, giving up 95% of the movie revenue. They weren't trying to get free money.
Yeah, but they
I don't
weren't
know what
financing anything. Like
they
that.
were under the new terms. They wanted
Well,
to
now,
finance
yes. This is
whatever
the new terms. Yes.
right, whatever percentage. Like I don't know what to believe because I've heard anywhere from 25 to 50.
Well, there's been two rumors. So the point is, as soon as this new deal fell apart, the 5-movie deal, or it concluded, it didn't fall apart. So once that ended and they went to renegotiate, so the details are that Marvel came to, or Disney came to, or sorry, Sony came to Disney and said, "Hey, we want to do the exact same deal. Like, let's just do same type of deal. Spidey gets to appear in 2 of your movies, like Avengers type things, and then 3 solo films. We finance the whole thing, give you 5% of the profits. He gets to exist in the MCU. All right, all right. That's their offer. Marvel rejected that and said, no, we want 50% of the solo profits as well. At which point,
depends on whose story you believe.
yeah. So then again, I've heard, I guess again, we don't know verifiably, but I've heard that that's what the initial offer was, to which Sony said, no, that's not happening. And then since then, there was another offer where Marvel and Disney has said, we will co-finance the movies, but we want 25% of the profits. Which to me sounds like a great deal. Like that
But
deal is fair.
Yeah. But even the 50-50 was co-financing. Like the rumor was both of them go in halfsies on the movies and they get back halfsies on the movies, I don't really, like, honestly, for Disney, like 5%, I don't know if that's really fair when you consider $400 million plus over the highest grossing Sony Spider-Man movie. I think they more than earned the right to negotiate a little bit more. I also kind of feel like they gave Sony the Spider-Man PS4 game like as a act of goodwill. I mean, like there's definitely like a lot of scenarios that they've done, I feel like, to show good faith to Sony. I feel like this Tom dude from Fox, from what I've read, is he came in and said, no, we learned everything we needed to know from you on how to
Yeah,
universe
I saw
build,
that.
and now we just want to do it ourselves and take all the money.
I mean,
And
again, you see,
I don't think that's good faith.
yeah, I mean, look, I agree with you as far as like that type of stuff. I don't even know how to comment on because we have no idea. Do you know what I mean? Like until somebody like hopefully like comes out and says like, hey, here's exactly what happened, or it's like we actually hear both sides of the story, because the truth is always somewhere in the middle. Like neither one side nor the other is like 100% of the way correct. But to me personally, I think that Sony's perspective on this, and again, the only reason why I am able to even say anything like for the Sony side is because I'm looking at it as a business transaction. As a fan of Marvel, I think it'd be amazing, of course, if Spider-Man stays a part of the MCU, because I think everybody benefits from that, in my opinion, as a fan, right? From a business perspective, I understand that Sony looked at it and they were like, hey, we made a Venom movie that made $1 billion without any hint of Marvel's assistance, and why would we then go out of our way to like keep sharing this property?
It was a terrible movie too. Well,
I mean,
it wasn't terrible. It was average.
I think it was like 6.5 out of 10. That's what I say. Like it wasn't great, but it was just like Yeah, it was fun. Like to check it out once, you know.
But do you think they could do that again?
I mean,
Like,
that's the thing. The question is this all the work of Marvel and Disney, like what we're having with comic book movies, or is it just that literally every comic book movie? Because look at like The Boys, right? That show on Netflix, it's doing insane sorry, on Amazon, it's doing insane numbers. It's doing incredible ratings and just a huge appeal for Amazon Prime. It's like it just seems like you can almost like go no wrong right now and do no wrong with comic books as a whole. Like if you do a comic book property, it just seems like for whatever reason we're in this weird period of time right now where it's like everything that is related to comic books is just massively successful.
except Shazam, apparently.
I mean, I think it's still a profitable film. Like I don't think it
Yeah,
lost
but
money.
it was the one kind of,
But that's the
you
thing.
know.
Like, do you not think that something like Shazam is like at this? Like, again, this is already a tangent, but it's at the same exact like rank as something like an Ant-Man or Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like those movies didn't make insane amounts of money either. Like when we're talking about some of these other Marvel movies that are not Avengers or basically ever since Infinity War, I think that everyone thinks that every Marvel movie makes $1 billion because everyone since then basically has like Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Endgame, like all those movies have been massive hits. But prior to that, they're like the Thor movies, they weren't huge massive successes until the third one.
Yeah, no, I totally get all that, like for sure. But my thing is, at this point, we like there's no good that can come from this separation. Like
Okay,
everybody is taking Marvel's side. Like I was actually trying to look up Sony's stock. Sony's stock has fallen almost as a direct result. It was down last I saw, like
I
a whole
mean,
percent.
yeah, but those things are honestly you can like there's so many things that can affect that, and it's all like speculative type stuff. Like where we'll see what happens to Sony stock in like a year. You know, like that's when you can see it where it trends, not where
I,
it like responses in that one
I mean,
day.
at the end of the day, I can't imagine a scenario where they don't fix this. And from my perspective, the main reason that I'm so bullish on Sony is because I think they need to see that, and I've already announced quote unquote support a non MCU Spider-Man in the theaters. I won't go see it.
Hmm.
Like I will acquire via ill means if I have to see it, but I'm not giving them money, and that's with my wallet, and that's the only way that Sony is going to listen is if we speak with our wallet.
But
Now
what if
these
it's
these
but what
idiots
if
that
it's
want to
well
like
done?
storm their what?
What if it's well done? Like Into the
I
Spider-Verse
don't.
was an amazing movie, was it not? It
Yeah,
had nothing to do with MCU. What if they
I don't.
do that type of quality film, but it's live action?
I don't care.
Okay, so
Like
it's
I, I don't.
so
I
it's
don't.
not
For
you
me,
don't have it's okay. So then you do make it now about like being loyal to one company.
no, no. I just want yes, Marvel. I'm loyal to Marvel, not Disney. I want I want Marvel to be able to use their characters,
They
and
still
I
can. It's just they choose not to. They can still make a Spider-Man TV show if they want to. Like they could
no,
literally
no,
be
no.
like,
I
we could make a
if they
live
want to
action
put
Spidey show.
if they want Miles Morales to show up on like he needs to, they should be able to do it. You know, like
Again, I'm not saying that I disagree with that, but what I'm saying is like if we're living a like happy go lucky like kumbaya kind of world, yes, I think that would be great, but it's like we can't ignore the fact that Marvel made a deal. It's like if you've made a commitment to do something and it's not like they were I know you're saying like, oh, well, they made it under duress or something like that, but it's like
yeah,
it was self-inflicted. It wasn't like they were like just stumbling along and then somebody just decided to like, oh yeah, let's just bankrupt Marvel. It's like they mismanaged themselves as a business, getting themselves into a position where they had to give up those movie rights to stay alive. They did, and therefore, at that time, yes, Sony took a gamble, which could have paid off, but it also could have been a massive fail. They could have made that Spider-Man movie and nobody went to watch it, or everybody received it like horribly, and then we would have never heard of Spider-Man or MCU or Marvel as like a cinematic property at all.
I think they would have made $7 million on Spider-Man by accident.
I mean,
Like,
I'm sure. Look, I think. Well, I mean,
there was no risk.
Well, you
Like
have
$7 million.
well, you have to account for like the risk of like producing the film, like putting in all the money to like make the movie, right?
I mean,
dude,
sure.
but by that logic, it's like, why did they stop after Batman and Robin and those horrible Batman movies? Because they weren't making money. Like, they were just not profitable for those companies, and that's why there was just this giant lull between Spider-Man and those Batman movies, right? Like, it wasn't a coincidence. And then now it's the other way around, where every company on the planet, as soon as they can get their hands on something superhero related, they try to do so, because they're like, okay, we just got to try to take part in this craze that's going on with superheroes right now. I just think that we're looking at it as though it's like, oh, well, Marvel comic books and comic book movies as a whole would have been popular no matter what. It's just that Sony took advantage of that deal. Versus, I think it's like, we have no idea how the heck it would have even, like, we don't know if Marvel would be Marvel today, or if it would even exist if that deal didn't take place.
Yeah, true, but like, they also could have been bought in bankruptcy, and you know, we could be here anyway. I mean, hell, if Sony just bought, I'm sorry if hell is like,
no, you're fine. You're fine.
All right, I know that I'm pretty sure we both try not to use the naughty words.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, I almost feel like it would have been better if Sony just bought all the characters back then. Like, they all belong together, and Spider-Man is such a, I mean, you could argue he's the most popular comic book character in the world.
Yeah.
Certainly top 3.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Without him,
definitely
Batman, and
the most popular Marvel character, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The most iconic, like everything. And you could literally prove this with facts, just from like figures of like how much the original appearance of Spider-Man cost versus everybody else. Like, you could just literally, nail that down. So I agree with you. Look, I think that it's interesting, I guess, like, the pivot in the argument is that what you're saying is that you just want all of those characters to be in one pool. And unfortunately, it's like, at the end of the day, then the company that is to blame for that is Marvel, because they chose to give off and sell off rights to different bidders instead of negotiating one deal where they said, like, okay, take it or leave it. This is the deal. We're offering $40 million, $30 million, whatever it is. You get X-Men, like, you get the whole 9 yards, And
it's a catch-22. Like, I don't feel good about that deal. I don't feel like it was a situation that they had any choice to do. It's like their gun was to their head, and they had to make this decision. It's like, oh, do I, sell my house so that I can eat, like, and I'll find another living situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's just, I don't look, if that deal was just a straight up business transaction between two companies that were fine, that were just doing it, I would look at it a lot differently. But the fact that, like, Sony took, I just feel like they came in, and there's a lot of blame on Marvel. I don't dispute that whatsoever. I never have. I think that was where character limits were coming into play.
Yeah. With Twitter debates, yeah.
But like, I don't debate. I don't
defend. Yeah, Marvel on that.
Yeah, like they were in a bad position,
self-inflicted.
But still, it is what it is, and I feel like Sony took advantage of the situation. And then I feel like Marvel entered this deal in good faith, and I don't feel like this Tom dude had the same good faith. And he's trying to, like, basically take his ball and go home. And I don't know, man. Like, it's just, I don't, if it wasn't, like, for the fact that there's all these quotes out there of him, like, being just like, oh, I learned everything I want to know, and now I'm just going to go do my own thing. I know we didn't say that, but, like...
No, I think he literally said that. I think that was an interview today, like, where they literally asked him, like, hey, how do you feel about this? And he said something, like, exactly like what you're saying, where they said, like, hey, we worked enough with Marvel where we feel like we can go on and do this on our own and do just as good of a job, if not better, than what they have.
And I just think that's messed up to go into a relationship like that with the intention of basically just taking all this information and then doing your own thing and creating a knockoff, and then like taking away something that rightfully, I don't know any other way to put it, that rightfully belongs to Marvel. And like, I know business wise it doesn't, but like Spider-Man's Marvel. He is Marvel. And
Okay.
like, he belongs to Marvel.
But again,
movies.
I guess like you
Marvel
see,
characters.
that's why, because like you're building Marvel as like its own thing that is like, for some reason you don't look at Marvel as a business. Because
No, I get that, but my thing is that I feel like Sony is the villain here. Like,
I
they
genuinely
are.
don't. I guess that's where my disconnect is, that I don't get that, because to me it's like it was a pure business transaction, and then even now, like in my personal opinion, if you look at it, the MCU needed Spider-Man just as much as Spider-Man needed the MCU. Like, I know people will disagree on that as well with me, but I personally feel like they were with Iron Man. It's like his entire saga was kind of wrapping up, and it's like now there's like this new life by becoming this like mentor type character to another giant character in the form of Spider-Man. They gave that like a whole new life for that character to now have another arc that we could go on. So it's not like there was nothing gained by them including Spider-Man like for the MCU. I think that it made those Avengers movies be more successful, and Sony took no profits in that. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the participation and the excitement of Avengers Infinity War, for us to be able to finally say, oh, it's an Avengers movie that has Spider-Man in it, is as huge of a deal as it was for Sony to get to enjoy Spider-Man being a part of the MCU. Like, I think
Yeah,
it was
but
it was
it's not like Sony didn't get their stuff out of it. They got Nick Fury,
and that's what I'm
you
saying.
know.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like, that's why I don't get the whole concept of villain. They both had stuff that they were benefiting from. I think that it's just that going forward, whatever, like the initial deal that Disney pushed for, supposedly, if that's the truth, because again, the reports did come out that that Sony offered them the exact same deal. So if Marvel was really that like hung up on like, oh, we love Spider-Man and we want him to be a part of our world, why would they just not take the same deal again?
Yeah, but like, if you're gonna sit there and think it's out of question for Marvel to ask for a 50-50 split, how can you not think it's out of question for Sony to expect a 95-5 split all over again, when Marvel just proved that they can make them substantially more money than what they're doing on their own?
I don't know if it was again substantially a lot more. I'm not sure as far as like the breakdown on the numbers, but I'm guessing again that they looked at Into the Spider-Verse and Venom, and they were like, "Why would we we can do this? They've proven it to themselves that they can do it." So
Into the Spider-Verse didn't make that much money.
no, but
comparatively.
I know, but I'm saying like again, Homecoming wasn't a giant success like Far From Home was.
I mean, Far From Home is Sony's biggest movie.
Yes, I agree. I'm not saying, again, the argument is not that there is benefit and that Sony gets to make more money. It's just that I think when they looked at like relative to how much more they make and giving up more of the share, up to 50%, if that was really the discussion, I don't get why they would agree to that either. Like, if I owned Spider-Man, I would
Hello?
never agree to that. Hello?
Why can't I hear you?
Can you hear me? Hello, hello, hello.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you
Okay.
now.
Good.
Yeah, I lost you
Yeah,
for a second.
it's all good. We're getting too heated. Discord's disconnecting us. But yeah, the point is like, I just think that there is no if I owned Spider-Man rights, I would never agree to a 50-50 split. It makes no sense because I would
I don't think so either, but I also have heard that's not the number.
Yes,
Like,
I agree, and that's the thing. Like, if the other deal is true, like the 7-picture deal with 25% share, they agree to bring in Venom into the MCU as well. If all that is true, I think that's the deal that should be signed and delivered, because I think that deal benefits everybody involved. The fans win,
but
Sony wins, Marvel and Disney wins. But for whatever reason,
if that was the deal and Sony walked away,
then I would change my tune. But I don't know. You see, the thing is, what we've heard is that Sony, like the details that weren't denied is the fact that Sony made an offer to do the exact same deal, and Disney said no, And then after that, what was reported is the 50% thing, and Sony walked away at that point. So it was like,
right.
if
But
that's,
I don't know that 50% was ever actually the offer, though. That's, I think it doesn't matter. Like, at the end of the day, like, there are reports that say it was 50, 30, and 25, and whatever it was, like, yeah, 50%. I get it. Like, that is definitely asking a bit much, but they were also offering to co-finance. So, and I understand Sony's perspective. They would rather pay the money up front and then just make all the money back. I get it. But I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to matter, because, like, I refuse to believe that they're not going to work this out. I just refuse. And, from my perspective, again, I believe Sony is the villain, and I believe they're the ones that need to change their mind. I believe if they come back to Marvel with something, reasonable, that they're just going to do it, or Disney, they're going to do it. And from my perspective, I think the venom, if you will, needs to go towards Sony.
Got it.
Because they're the ones that I feel like are holding this up. And maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. But
yeah, I guess that was a nice way to like summarize everything on your perspective. For me, I genuinely look at it as I don't have a villain in this story outside of like, if I step back and I just look at it as somebody who enjoys watching these movies and just as a consumer, I think they're both at fault, because I think that it's just like, you guys could have agreed on something. Like, it's just where no one wants to give up and like give a little bit of an inch towards the other, and each one is trying to big dog the other one. So that's my perspective on like, both of them are the villain in that sense. But outside of that, I really don't understand the perspective that people have of painting Sony as the one who's like the abuser in this relationship and them taking advantage, where it's like, there was clearly a business transaction that took place that was at that time, in my opinion, more than fair, because we'd have no idea of how any of that would have played out and the position from which Marvel was coming from. It's like nobody else offered them a better price. If they did, they would have taken it. Like, if some other company said, hey, okay, we'll offer you $100 million for Spider-Man, they would have sold it for that amount. And regardless, I think like doing the whole 2020 hindsight and like looking back and adjusting, it's like you could make the arguments about Marvel was way undervalued, and what Disney paid for Marvel in 2009 was way too little. Like, because now they've made significant amounts more from just the movies, and if we include into that licensing and all the other stuff that they've made 10 times, 100 times their money. So I think that argument is really like slippery slope, and it's too difficult to like prove one way or another. So to me, it's a pure business transaction, and unfortunately, it just involves something that a lot of us have emotional attachments to, and a property that we have emotional attachment to outside of just it being like a sale of, like, let's say if they sold them some sort of a really fantastic warehouse or some crazy patent.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I feel like if, you were selling your house for, it was worth $200,000, but
how could you know that? How could you determine worth? Because wouldn't worth be exactly what someone's willing to pay for it? Like, because if your house was worth $200,000, and even if you had to sell it quickly, right? But somebody came through and gave you $200,000, you would still take it, right? If somebody came through and all the best deal that you ever got for that particular part of your house or your house was $170,000, then that's what it's worth, right? Like, you can't just arbitrarily create value.
Really get to kind of no, I mean, like, if your house is worth $200,000 and like somebody comes in knowing that you're desperate and that you need money now and strong arms you into something for like $100,000 and then turns around and flips it for like $300,000, like it's just, I'm trying to like come up with a scenario where there's so many scenarios where like people get a raw deal. Yeah. And then I also look at, contracts like, sports contracts. Like, there are guys all the time that are like, hey, I signed this deal. I'm worth way more money. Let's fix it.
Renegotiate.
And they do.
Yeah. Sometimes, of course, because they feel like there's more value to it. But at the same time, like, look, I'm sure that Sony paid Marvel quite a bit of money for the video game deal that they put together. I'm sure. So it's like, it's not like they're not getting paid for the rights of that character at some point or time. The point is like exactly how you said, like, first of all, an element of like when you, if you paint it as like, oh, you were selling your house, like let's use the house example, and you were desperate, it's not that they were desperate. It's that, let's say you've accumulated insane amounts of credit card debt because you just want to spend money and just be flamboyant and awesome and have this like baller life. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I can't pay for anything. I got to sell my house. So it's like, it was self-inflicted. So then recontextualizing.
What if it was medical bills?
That's different, but it wasn't. We know it wasn't because it was Marvel being greedy with the comic books and printing 1,000 different variants and doing all the stuff that they like. You can. That's already like
variants weren't a big deal back then.
With all the shiny stuff and everything, like that was the cause of the crash. It was like an abuse of their own customer base. They abused the customers, and the customers were like, "Yeah, we're done. This is not collectible anymore." So it's like, I mean, it was self-inflicted. And then furthermore, what if you do buy that house, right? And then you find out, oh, there's a leaky roof that's going to cost 30 grand to fix. Oh, there's this, and the other. And you end up not even, even if you do sell it for 300,000, you only break even. And when adjusted for inflation, you might have actually lost money.
I blame myself. The house analogy was not a good one.
I'm just like, I guess
I'm just sitting here saying, oh well, your inspector would have caught that. Like, and it doesn't matter. Like, in the end of the day, whatever.
Yeah, I just think, again, you see, to me, it's a business deal. So I don't understand why Sony's being painted as this like villain or organization that just like for some reason like is holding these rights hostage. Whereas it's like, no, they made a business transaction and they obviously care about this property because it makes them a lot of money. So it's like, why would they give up?
Nah, they're villains.
Okay, got it. Fair enough. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let us know where you guys sit on this debate. Do you side with Jay? Do you side with me? Do you side? Most certainly, I'm probably going to most likely hear most people's side somewhere in the middle because that's usually the case. But again, we look forward to hearing from you guys. We had an absolute blast here with this chat. Of course, if you're watching this on my end, go check out Jay. I appreciate that. He went on the record here and was able to articulate his opinions very, very, very well. And I'll have a link to his channel in the description box. Anything else you want to plug, Jay?
Well, if you're watching on my channel, you probably already watched on Blitz's channel. So
much appreciated.
Yeah, but definitely, obviously, you know, Blitzwinger, you got to check him out, man. Like, I'm glad that, like, honestly, we could probably talk for like another hour.
Yeah,
on
for
this,
sure.
And it would be interesting, and people would want to listen.
Yeah.
But yeah,
yeah.
I honestly, like, I'm glad. Typically, I don't like respond to people if I think it's going to turn into a debate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the end, like, I still felt like that was not necessarily the best example for a point you were trying to make that I completely agree with.
Okay. I see what you mean. Yeah. So, and that's why I said, like, the whole thing of, I'd rather us discuss things because nowadays it's like if you start sometimes debating something through Twitter, it's so easy to start arguing with someone where you don't even realize that you guys might be even like arguing towards the same point. So that's why I just wanted to, I guess, like hear your view on like the disagreeing and like, you know, just to understand like where people are coming from and if it's all just nostalgia or whatever it might be, like feel good type stuff, you know. So it was just an interesting debate for sure. So I appreciate you doing this.
Like, I feel like we both handled it really well. Like, there was never a point where I'm like, oh, why is he being a jerk? You know?
Yeah.
I hope it was the same for me.
Yeah, for sure. No. I absolutely, dude. I mean, like, that's why I wanted to like even discuss with you because I knew that it was going to be productive. Like, it's not going to be just turning into a shouting match or something like that. It was just an actual point of view that each of us was able to, I think, articulate well. Well, I guess we'll leave it up to people to let us know.
And to be fair, like I said, I understand both sides. Like, I think we've wanted to do something like this before, and we end up ended up being in a grief festival.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that like we kind of like I think we both feel what we feel for sure, even if we understand where we're each coming from.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, this was great. And I love, like I said, I appreciate you taking the time, and I love honestly making videos like this with you. I think we we definitely we get along well. We put
Yeah.
out good content.
Yeah, if you guys enjoy this, again, smack that like button, and who knows, maybe we'll do something else along these lines in the future. So, peace out, guys.